welcome everyone to the second session or second get together of Order Management Gurus, OMG. For the ones who are joining us for the first time or you joined us recently, we started as a thought to create a space for folks who've been order management practitioners, either tech, architect, or product, or otherwise to kind of get together, without worrying about what banners we carry or what companies we work for. The goal really is to create. We felt that there's a need for a dialogue in that zone. So this is our second conversation. First one was about a month ago on a topic on ERP vis-a-vis OMS. So what we'll do is just give an opportunity for folks who's joined us for the first time to kind of say, their names, where you're from. I would also request you, everyone, to kind of drop their curtains if you have a possibility. As OMS, we always sit in the back end of e-com, right? Every opportunity we get to be in the experience layer, I would rather us to grab it if possible, right? So if you could, but I'll open the floor and see. I think everyone can speak, I can see, but yeah, if you want to go around the table and just say a few things about yourself, just your name and where you're from, what brings you here, just like 10 seconds, and then we can go from there.
Yeah, I'm joining for the first time. First meeting I couldn't make. I can go. My name is Venkata NKT, the shortest form of my name. And I work at Signet Jewelers. I manage DOMs and also digital testing here at Signet. I'm based out of Plano, the Dallas region.
Wonderful. Very warm welcome, Venkat.
Thank you.
Right. Who wants to go next?
I can go next. I'm Naga. I'm also joining for the first time. I am a senior product manager, technical at Stack Software.
Welcome, Naga.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, I'll go. This is Rob Sweeney. My background is I started years ago in order management with Yonder and Sterling Commerce, IBM. Kind of veered off into the world of more commerce technologies over the last few years, and but never have left my roots and interest in order management.
Fantastic. Welcome, Raj.
Yeah, I will go next. Hi, this is Sanjay Prabhu. I missed my this first meeting. This is my first meeting. Actually, last meeting I couldn't make it, and I'm currently with the BGS Wholesale Club. I manage order management here with the BGS, and yeah, that's all.
Wonderful, Sanjay. Glad you joined.
Hey, I'll go next. So this is my first time. My name's Adam, and I work for an OMS provider. But I got my start in the world with Sterling at Lowe's companies, and so Gautham taught me everything I know, which is a good thing. And I'm really excited just because to see all the names of the people on here. Like I don't know Peter Stubbs personally, but I followed him for a long time, so it was really good just to join and hear from all the folks that are leaders in the industry. So excited to be here.
No, thanks, Adam. A lot of us have a connection with Lowe's.
Yes, exactly.
All right, who next? Jay, go on.
I'll go next. So Jay Black, first meeting. I missed the last one. Sorry. I know a lot of the cast of characters here. I'm an ex-Yontra guy. Sterling Commerce did implementations. IBM did worldwide sales and pre-sales with Rob. Good to hear your voice, Rob.
Same.
Now I'm at a company called Gray Orange. I'm doing sales for their G Store product. So it's good to be here and good to see a lot of familiar faces.
I'm glad.
Good to see you, Jay.
Absolutely.
All right. I'm going to take a count of 3. Who else?
Yeah, I'll go next. Hello, everyone. This is Prabhanjan. You can call me Preps. Been in the world of order management since quite some time, about 18 years now. Started with Infosys, moved a couple of companies, and currently working with Cognizant, serving different clients. I've worked with retailers across US, Europe, and Australia.
Thanks for sharing, Pramanjan. Glad you joined.
I'll go next. Yeah, this is Karan, and I'm currently working with Blue Yonder as a director of engineering on ML platform side, where we're currently trying to like power our promising and sourcing solution through ML use cases. So yeah, and I think Peter Stubbs is there, so we are working closely together as well.
Welcome, Karan.
Hey, Peter.
You're here to share all your algorithms, right?
Yeah, I'm trying to learn more what we can empower with. Yeah, that's what today's topic is, the like driving factor for me to join. I think last meeting I missed, but at least I thought, okay, today looks excited to the area I'm working right now. So
Wonderful. Anyone else brave enough to share?
I can go next.
Nextuple. I should change my last name to order management.
Hey everyone, this is Vinay Bhatt. I'm with Nextuple now as Senior Director of Engineering. Before this, I was heading OMS at Lowe's, India, and before that, I was with Sterling IBM.
Wonderful. Welcome back,
I can
Vinay.
go next.
Abhishek,
I'm Kim Glasscock. I'm the OMS practice leader at EY. Before that, we were part of Zilker Technology. And before that, I was in the client world with OMS and retail with Fossil. Glad to be here today.
Hey, thanks for joining in, Kim. Hope you're feeling better. I can see your cast in the arm. Hope you feel better soon.
It's hopefully next week we get stitches out and all that. So I'm hoping to get there soon. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I'll jump in.
Sure. Go ahead.
So good morning, everyone. This is Scott Vifquain, currently the Chief Technology Officer at Tailored Brands. You probably know it better for some of our banners, Men's Warehouse, Joseph A. Banks. Great to be part of this group. I think there's a mistake on this slide. You called me an industry expert after hearing everyone's introduction. I'll be learning from you all. But looking forward to it's going to be a lively discussion today. Can't wait for it.
Thanks, Scott. Really appreciate you joining us for the panel today. All right. With that, I'm going to go launch.
I think John also wanted to introduce Abhishek. John Brash.
Okay. Did I miss someone? Go on, John.
No, I was just gonna introduce. I am the order sourcing and logical inventory product manager for Gap Inc. Ex Manhattan. Just kind of coming here based on a forward invite and looking forward to hearing all of the discussions. Looking forward to hearing. Our focus right now is learning how order management can be used to maximize margin. So I don't know if that's going to be a topic, but I'm very happy to hear everybody's thoughts in the space.
I'm glad you shared that, right? So you're seeing the industry backlog being built here, right? As you share those topics and, all these gurus, brains and intellect, start thinking and start, churning on it. No, I somehow don't see you on the list. That's why I was wondering, but glad. Thanks, Karan, for pointing that. All right, I'm going to go bring up a quick poll just so that we are settled. All right. If you were not here, where would you be? And if you don't see anything on the list, feel free to put it on chat. If it were up to me, I would be circling around Grand Canyon on a helicopter, but that's me, not hiking, circling. All right. See, 23 of 27, 37.
If we move the meeting a little bit later, we can call it OMS and drinks, and maybe there will be some spillover secrets with a couple of drinks. So we should consider that.
Oh, did you miss the meeting last time, Darko?
No,
Just kidding. I'm just kidding. And just
Darko, we have a separate one where we all get together and code, when while having drinks. That's how you get all the defects on your end.
all right, 31 of 37. Gonna wait for just a second more and see. Nice. All right, I'm gonna end poll now. Yeah, so most people would be outdoors. Yeah, thanks to summers. The other equal would be having drinks. I see a bunch meditating, right? That's something we can do together. That could be a thing, right? Maybe we can split into 2 rooms next time. One could do the BYOD and the other could be meditating, right, in the Zen mode. So that's ideas for next time, Karan.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much again. So I won't take a lot of time. Just a couple of housekeeping things before I hand it over to Gautham. We are recording this meeting, so we would be, go stop share. We would be putting this on the group, the recordings on the group and the group is public, so anyone can go see it. If you wish to go speak, feel free to raise your hand and and we can unmute. You can ask a question, you can drop in chat or you can raise your hand coming back into the panel. Just a couple of things about the group, right? Why, the whole goal of this group is to kind of bring people together and talk about order management. Not a few rules, not meant to be a forum to sell per se. There are many other forums, opportunities we get all week to do that. The posts will be moderated and it's meant for people who are focused on order management, right? Either you've lived through that journey in your past life or you're doing it today, just to make it more real. So you wouldn't see a lot of people joining in the group because that's something that we are making sure that the quality stays intact. But yeah, any messages, feel free to drop me a note. This is Abhishek from Nextuple, handing it over to Gautham. Over to you, Gautham.
Thank you, Abhishek, and thanks everyone for joining. Abhishek, do you mind putting on the slide? Just one slide, just as a walk. Yeah, so today's topic really came out of the poll that we made to the group to find out what our next topic is. And not surprising with all the current events going on, I believe AI is in the minds of everybody. So we picked the topic of AI and ML in our domain as it concerns with order management and more in particularly with promising and sourcing. So the current context really is sourcing and promising decisions for customer orders has grown really complex over the years. I mean, in the past, there was no AI, ML being used. Very simple heuristic rules being used. But now, given the complexity that retailers have to deal with the number of decision factors increasing and the ever increasing amount of retail data and personalization data that is generated, the need for AI and ML kind of is becoming core, right? And what we want to actually kind of look today is try to see if AI ML approaches are proving out to be successful in the field. I mean, is this the future, right? I mean, given the challenges that we are seeing in retail. So for our panel today, I mean, we have Scott, who introduced himself. He's the CTO of Tailored Brands. He has a rich history with order management, and in particular, I think being the SVP of technology at Kohl's, having deployed one of the AI solutions in Kohl's, managing the solution through it. So there's a rich experience there. And then we have Peter Stubbs, who is the Senior Director of Product at Blue Yonder. And before that, he was a Senior Director of Product at News Store. And prior to that, he was the architect with IBM Order Management suite of products. And we also have from Nextuple, Devadas Pattathil, who is Nextuple's co-founder and head of product. And he earlier served as a senior director for Walmart online grocery and order management technology, where he had actually done some core innovations around sourcing and promising for Walmart. So I think we have a very rich panel here to address some of the questions. and concerns we might have. So what we would do is we kind of go through a few questions. I think we kind of shared the topics earlier and the questions that we would try to answer. But what I would actually like is encourage the participants, if you have any pressing question that you would like to ask the panelists, we can table that in the Q&A or put it in the chat. So we'll have Karan kind of look at it and towards the end, try the panel answer those questions as well. Okay.
Can I suggest something, Gautham? I think beyond the panelists, even I think this group here has a lot of rich experience, and so aside from questions, I think if we all have points of view, things of that nature, I think it'd be good to get a broader discussion even going. So certainly I think having a panel will help facilitate the conversation and provide the backbone for this discussion, but I'm hoping that we can participate more meaningfully across the board.
Absolutely, yeah, that's great. Thanks, Tarpan. And before we get started, I just wanted to run a poll. So Abhishek, I mean, let's get another quick poll, this time a serious one about AI. So if people can take time to kind of answer the poll, we'll just go on from there.
I see one scared of, a few scared of being AML and Singularity. Thanks for being honest. It's courageous in its own way. All right, I see 36 of 38 done. I'm going to end the poll and share the results.
Okay, it's wonderful. I mean, overwhelmingly positive, 86% are welcoming the AI/ML advancement. I think that's amazing. We have 11% that are scared, justifiably so. We don't know what's happening with Singularity. People actually keep saying Singularity is a couple of decades away, but we'll see. And there's still 3% who think it's a fad. So yeah, it's good to know. Okay, so let's get started with the discussion. So first thing, I mean, I want to actually ask Das here really about the history and evolution of sourcing and promising. I mean, how did we get Das to the current point, right? How earlier, I think, if you go back like 30, 40 years, I mean, people were doing order management. People actually had sourcing approaches. They used to fulfill customer orders. So how did we get to this current point, right? And can you actually help us walk through the evolution of like sourcing, right, and the complexities involved?
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be news to anybody here, but I'll just go a couple of decades back, when really e-commerce, order management, or e-commerce became, started to become prevalent. It was fairly simple in my mind. Sourcing was, setting up one FC, close to in a Memphis, close to a FedEx hub. That's all, most people did, in those days. But slowly but surely, I think the complexity of figuring out where to ship from, what carrier to use, started getting more advanced as years went by. And I think that the real I would say till maybe 2008, 10. From my experience, I did not see a lot of complexity in sourcing. It was fairly simple. I want to minimize my shipments. I want to get it as fast as possible. That's about it. I think it's really when Amazon started offering Prime, 2-day shipping, fast shipping, is when things started to change. And around the same time, I feel like there was also the notion that once you've done buy online, pick up from store, you can actually start using stores as fulfillment centers. That became more common. And it seemed like a good idea because stores, you already have inventory that is sunk cost, that's already available to ship. Why not use it? Local, closer to the customer. it seemed like a good idea, but I think, when, retailers started to try it, that's when I think, the pitfalls started, coming to the fray, which is like, lots of stores had terrible inventory accuracy, right? So now this started impacting the customer experience, because if you 20% of your orders, they start back ordering, or you have to bounce from one store to another. That's not a great experience that now you're offering to the customer. Now that, I think that is the point where retailers start seriously thinking about, what's the power of sourcing algorithm here? Can I actually predict, whether I'm going to be able to fill something from a store, right? I think that became important. Second thing was, holiday pressures, because it's a good idea to ship from stores as long as you're shipping 30 orders from a store. But when you have a holiday peak, now you suddenly just bombarded a store with, 200 orders, and now, you're catching up for 3 days. The picker at the store has no time to do it, so he's just simply going to cancel it, right? So how do you put capacity controls over what you can actually do from a store? That became important. I think to me, these are the points where retail started thinking about a more comprehensive sourcing that is looking at multiple dimensions and parameters. I'll keep it to that, and I'll just let others chime in.
Yeah, this is amazing. I mean, I think you hit the nails, right? So complexity, the holiday preparedness, and all the data that was actually churning around. I think that definitely kind of impacted how we got to the current situation of, yes, we need newer tools than what we had earlier to manage promising and sourcing. So Scott, from your standpoint, right, from a retail standpoint, you've kind of been in the retail for a long time, been in technologies at the retailers. So from your view and your vantage point, when did you actually see this, as a retailer's technology owner, you started seeing that the systems that you had really weren't really prepared to handle the business requirements that were coming in from the field, right? From running retailers actually running that. Can you actually share some of your perspective of when, in the history that started happening?
Yeah, would be happy to. And just for context, I introduced myself. I'm currently at Tailored Brands, and we're doing all sorts of exciting stuff with ML AI right now. But in other areas, and we have a interesting Tox rental business with circular inventory that creates all sorts of unique challenges. But I think for the purposes of this group and some of the stuff we're talking about, I'll reference back to my experience when I was at Kohl's, and I was there from 2005 through a couple of years ago. So saw tremendous changes, you can imagine, through that time period. And when I arrived there 2005, it was single fulfillment center. That's it. There was no sourcing decision, right? And then from there, it got very, very complicated very quickly. By 2010, Kohl's has over 1,000 stores, and most of those were fulfilling orders. And so it became very clear very quickly that the tools that we had were not going to do the job. And so I think the first tool that was built homegrown was called multi-location order fulfillment. Meatloaf is what it was called. And all it was allowed you to have 2 facilities, but a SKU could only live in one. So it was a SKU facility mapping. How simple, right? But that lasted like 2 years. That was basically allow you to do drop ship and ship alone stuff, get them out of the core building. But we knew we had to get multi-facility in terms of fulfillment centers and then eventually stores. So that was the genesis for bringing in a real solution. Kohl's selected Sterling, and I think to this day is still on that product. But and it started out with very simply 2 fulfillment centers, and then I think 2 years later was the stores, and pretty soon after that it was a small set of stores, and before you knew it, it was all the stores. So and it was a simple solution back then, 2009, 10. It wasn't what it is today, and it was heuristics and rules to minimize cost and get the order sourced from a location as close as possible to the customer. But it was relatively simple. And for me, the inflection point, I think, as Das mentioned, the moment we decided to bring stores in, it instantly got much more complicated, highly complex problem domain. And at first was this massive headache, but then as you started to play with the problem, you're like, whoa, the opportunities here are tremendous for us to optimize. And so it was a fun journey from about 2009 to 2020, 21. every year was a different year with new challenges, and the bar just kept getting raised. The solution set kept getting better, and year over year, more and more ML and AI is baked into the solutions that were used at Cole. So it was an exciting time.
Fantastic. Thank you, Scott. I mean, yeah, I mean, I agree. Right? It's the inflection point, the simplicity of fulfillment networks. I mean, at some point, because of the online coming e-com transformation and then the retailers' reaction to it and consumers kind of demanding new ways of fulfillment, it really hit upon the situation where the existing tools had to become radically complex to deal with a lot more decisions. So yeah, you're absolutely right. And I mean, that's I think the store network coming into the fulfillment portion radically changed how people actually saw their systems actually doing sourcing and promising. Pete, again, you've been a technologist for a long time now. I mean, with IBM, News Store. So could you kind of share your perspective on the journey, right? The history of like technology transition?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'd like to concentrate a little bit on the complexity angle of it. So if you really think once you introduce stores into your fulfillment network, right, you now have a lot more things to worry about: cost, safety stock, delivery date commitments, labor capacity, delivery capacity. All of these things now become in scope of things you have to worry about more than ever. So really, that's why we kind of look towards AI to solve some of this complexity, right? Let AI predict or set some of these values for me, right? And try to figure out what the right settings are for those for me. Or at least if I get it wrong the first time, let's say I do a setup for configuration around labor capacity, right? How much my stores can fulfill. Let AI figure out if I got that right? Let's look what my settings were versus what actual reality is. And I can compare that and say, oh, AI is telling me, I didn't quite get it right. And that's okay. I can adjust those settings, or maybe even have AI adjust those settings for me. Another factor to bring up here in the history is more about the monolithic OMS towards the composable microservices, right? So you have this monolithic OMS traditionally, which is typically where you get your sourcing functionality from, and it would be a big implementation and you'd have a lot of configurations to do. Whereas these composable microservices let you take things like AI in smaller chunks, right? So you can do something like, hey, I want to predict my safety stock settings, right? I want a tool that helps me know what my safety stock settings should be. So I can do this composable microservice, which is independent from my OMS implementation, right? And just predict that and use that as input to my OMS, right? So these composable microservices really help us digest these AI solutions in smaller pieces and take advantage of them, compared to our traditional OMS situation.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. I think you're talking about different domains that started impacting the complexity of the overall solution, like labor capacity management. Like, how do you set these rules? Like rules in a rule-based system, managing the rules itself became very complex. And to have a system kind of analyze your data and then get those rules for you, yeah, I agree. I mean, that's a job for AI to come up with and then have assistance from you.
I used to say to configure a Sterling OMS, you needed a PhD, right? In Sterling, you needed to study that long. If you see, even to this day, you'll still see on people's resumes a Sterling OMS as a key, asset. So yeah, we want to eliminate that barrier, right, to be able to use these tools.
Right. Wonderful. So a related question in this, I mean, again, Scott, you might be able to help us with this, right? I mean, what have you seen in this area, right? I mean, what have you seen to be more priority, right, in terms of application of AI? Would it be like forecasting in terms of what's happening, or is it ETA prediction for promising, or stock out predictions, or profitability? And we've heard different conversations, but from your point, right, giving and like helping retailers run their businesses, what did you see to be like a big priority, right?
Well, I think all the above in terms of, and each retailer might be different, but I think all those things you said are all like, it's a great playground for predictive ML. So not Gen AI, but predictive ML that's been around. Old fashioned ML, if you can imagine, we're actually saying that, but it's a perfect domain for it, right? Because it's all about predicting the likelihood to fulfill in a store. Dynamic safety stock is all about that. And that was one of the first use cases that really leaned into ML in a heavy way. When we were at Kohl's, we brought on a kind of a bolt-on solution to do that dynamic safety stock. And that was a fascinating problem, and one that is great. You know, maximize your assortment without creating too much of a bounce between stores as things can't get filled. So that was a fantastic use case. But the one that really, and by the way, my examples are a couple years old, so this group is so much on the leading edge, this may be a bit dated, but the one that really got the attention of everyone, the C-suite, everyone at Kohl's, was markdown avoidance. It was very, very powerful. And it emerged at a time, a couple years before the pandemic, when we were all, the religion was minimize PPO, right? Packages per order, do not split. You're killing the company with splits, right? So do not split an order. That was the motto.
Yeah.
Everything we did around placement and sourcing decisions was around that. Then all of a sudden, along comes markdown avoidance. So I think Kohl's, a lot of style, fashion styles that are going to go to markdown at some point. Build a sourcing algorithm that's going to see a markdown event for a SKU ordered by a customer, looks at the positions in your stores, and now favors sending that SKU to a store that's it got high exposure, and possibly splitting the order because of that, intentionally splitting an order to save money in the future. So now you have a guaranteed spend more now to probably save more in product margin in the future. In the context is a company that does not want to spend more on cost of shipping because it's very expensive. So imagine the selling of that took. And so good news is we had a really great cross-functional team. Finance was part of that cross-functional team. They said, this could be powerful, but let's prove it. And the good news about markdown avoidance is you can prove it. You just let it play out past the markdown event. You look back and you could say, did we sell things at full mark via e-com sourcing or not? Otherwise, they would have been sold at markdown and you would have lost that much margin. So you can do the math looking backwards and prove you did or did not make that right decision a month prior. So after looking at it for a couple months, it was a no-brainer. The results came in. It was like, oh my gosh, start doing this in a big way. And it was far more powerful. As powerful as the PPO cost of shipping cost lever is, for Kohl's at least, and again, it's different for every retailer, right? But for Kohl's, the markdown avoidance was huge. And that's that's perfect for ML. So now you predict what's going to happen, something happens, you feed that right back into your algorithm and it keeps getting better. So a couple examples there, but that last one, the markdown avoidance, was the one that really kind of woke people up across, again, everyone knew about it. It's like, whoa, that's a big deal. So great example though, of applying ML in a pretty creative way.
Yeah, I think it's impressive. So markdown avoidance kind of hits the point really in terms of profitability, right? The broader profitability construct is how do you actually execute a product or fulfill a customer's order profitably? And markdown avoidance is one way to look at not just the shipping aspect of it, but also looking at, okay, is there a potential of a product sitting idle somewhere to go on a markdown, which you could ship out to a customer and instead convert that into revenue.
Yeah,
that's amazing. So Scott, I mean, related to this, I know this, I just want you to help like people understand, like how did this kind of project happen, right? Did it happen organically? Or was this like a technology initiative to actually do this? Or how did this happen? And if you can explain like the stakeholders who were involved, that would just help.
Yeah, this is actually a great history, and folks on this call might be aware of some of this, but this is a bit of an IBM commercial. So, we were a Sterling customer and just using the standard product. This is, I don't know, 2010-ish. IBM approached us, the strategic partners with Kohl's, and said, hey, we want to solve a problem that hasn't been solved somewhere in retail, first of a kind, right? And we looked at 2 or 3 domains that had unique, challenging things that hadn't been solved, and ended up selecting sourcing and promising as an area at the time was pretty immature. And And basically what I think they now call the Sterling Order Optimizer powered by Watson. I don't know the name of it. I think it's evolved a little bit, but that tool today, that's where it was born. And that was in IBM's data science labs. This was the scientist building it, applying ML AI principles at the time with a full vision of all the stuff I just talked about. They saw it needed to be multidimensional, balancing cost of shipping, cost of labor, capacity, and future markdown avoidance, stock out avoidance. So they saw all of that early on. We saw it and we said, okay, we're going to build towards that. And that was the beginnings of that product today. And I don't know if other folks are using it or aware of it, but it's a, well, when I last worked with it, it was a pretty powerful tool and kept getting better every year. So, but that's the background. It was a pretty neat partnership.
Thank you, Scott. Yeah. So Das, I mean, based on your experience, right? How did you actually see these kind of projects kick in? I mean, how did this, it's interesting to look at it and say, yes, somebody actually said, yeah, let's use AI or ML, right? So how did you actually see from your perspective, the history of like projects getting approved in here and who made the decision to use like AI?
I have a great story. I have a Walmart story that I shared this in the Walmart's e-commerce town hall in 2013, and I'll keep it brief. I won't take too much time. But the moral of the story is that I think there is AI is great, but you can actually do a lot more towards the journey in AI to just get incremental benefits. So I personally, I ordered a mouse, from Walmart. Being a loyal employee, I ordered from Walmart.com, and it told me that I'm going to get, and this was sometime late March, and the date given to me was April 8th, right? I would not have, basically ordered from Walmart if I was not an employee, clearly, because electronics is something that you probably want sooner than 8-9 days. I got the shipment on April 2nd, to my surprise. And I just looked up, I went to the order management system. I looked up where it got sourced from. It got sourced from Sacramento, right? It took 2 days to get to my home. Great. So I just, out of curiosity, I just went in and said, okay, what is the percentage of orders we are actually promising and delivering early? So 70% of the orders were, being delivered early, right? So it just, it just blew my mind. So I started, digging further and, found a lot of different buffers and flaws in the way that we were at that point of time making a promise to the customers. So, I mean, at that point, it was just an intuition that, like, let's try to be more accurate, and we can definitely get more people buying from Walmart. And I went and sold this concept to the SVP of supply chain at that point of time, and my boss, who was the VP of technology. And what I was basically presenting was, let's get more accurate. We can put a solve in which can make the promise more accurate. We can make the sourcing more accurate, as well as we can also add in some concepts around lower cost and balancing utilizations. I threw that in there. Unfortunately, the holiday was approaching at the point of time. You don't get too much time to build something because you work towards a holiday. So although I wanted to build this in a newer technology, PL SQL is what the current technology was on. So I was given a team to modify the current PL SQL code to improve the promising and sourcing. We had, we got to work in about 2.5-3 months. We got a solution running with looking at basically the capacity, the by store, by DC, accurate promise dates, all that. I mean, I won't go into the details, but the net we did an A/B test, and we saw 2.5% conversion increase right away, just by pulling the promise date by 1.5 days. So that became a hit because it got rolled out, and that had a 200 million plus benefit right away, to the top line. So, the moral of the story is that I think you can optimize. So you can think about heuristics first, right? Even if you have something in mind in terms of getting to a AI-driven solution, break it down, right? My point of view is that break it down and look at, rules or heuristics to get to certain things, get that working, and parallelly start using ML to, get better at it, right? That was something, I learned quite quickly that, this, rather than jumping into an ML solution right away, maybe baby steps.
Thanks, Asai.
So, while you switch gears, Gautam, I just want to share that there are a few questions on the Q&A.
Yeah.
You might want to have a look at your chat, and then there are also some questions on the chat itself.
Yeah, I pinged you the questions.
Okay, I think the first question, I don't know who this is from. What inputs have you seen to be helpful in terms of feeding the AI to determine the safety stock or other levels of hiding inventory from ship from store?
Sure, I can help with that.
Yeah.
So one thing definitely is the velocity of the products, right? How fast they're moving out of the store. So if you see something that is quite quickly moving, you might have a higher safety stock to protect some of that. Also, you can, if you're using a really strong ML solution, you might also be predicting sales in that particular store location. So you can say, I'm predicting that this many walk-in sales will happen for this product in this location. So that's also an aspect of the equation. And then of course your regular static, your product definitions, and there'll be some decisions that you make if you were a retailer to say, I expect this product to sell so much, right? You might have some predictions yourself, the product category itself, those kind of static things normally you would look at also, of course, would play a factor as well.
Yeah, I would agree with all that. I think obviously fill rate. The challenge with dynamic safety stock that we found was the matrix is big. If you got 1,000 stores and 10,000 plus SKUs in the store, you're talking 10 million to 100 million data points. And very few retailers have a velocity at that data point, that SKU, that store that's high enough to actually predict what it should be. And so then you have to group SKUs together that have a common movement and pattern. That's dynamic and really hard to figure out. So that's where the magic was. And that comes down, I think, to your point, what are the attributes that you would use to group things together? And that itself evolved. But I think the richer you can make your dynamic safety stock engine around awareness of not just what this SKU is, but some of its attributes, so it can start to think about logical groupings and pick up, instead of managing 10 million data points, it's a much smaller subset, and you get more of a velocity to work off of and a richer signal. So that was the trick, and it took a while to figure that out. But that's I think one of the bigger challenges of dynamic safety stock.
Okay. Thank you, Scott. Thanks, Peter. So one thing, related to this, I wanted to actually ask is, I know AI has been actually told, or now we know that AI can actually address a lot of challenges, but then there's this whole notion of garbage in, garbage out. So how, from a practical implementation standpoint, how did you actually resolve in these practical projects, right? Improving data quality. We know inventory accuracy, inventory data not being there, or something misconfigured. So what was the learnings, right, from the projects that have been deployed to figure out and reduce like biases or data quality, or even improving transparency? We know people complain, in promising, how did you arrive at a particular decision, right? So how did you actually go about like reducing this? I'm sure it would have taken a period of time. Was there certain things actually done from a technology implementation standpoint to get rid of getting the right data, right? First, projects to actually improve your data quality or inventory situations, and making sure you basically do some bias reduction in areas where you're seeing issues. So can you actually, Scott, can you help us kind of understand over the period where this AI-based solution was deployed, what were the side things that were done to make sure that the AI doesn't go like tangential, right, and start throwing decisions all over the place?
Yeah, great question. And because, this was all, like I said, old-fashioned predictive ML, the data signals did the store fill the order correctly, and did the markdown get avoided or not? And those are facts, and that data was clean. And as long as you fed that back into the algorithm, we felt pretty good it was getting better over time. So didn't necessarily have a lot of concerns about the data because it just happened to be clean. It was, very much important transactional sales data that we had and was clean. But you touched on something that was very much a real problem, which was the black box transparency question. Why was it making the decisions it was making? Because as it got better and better, it was more hands off. At some point it became that multi-modal balance. It looked at the balance of cost of labor, cost of shipping, capacities, and you gave it kind of some preferences, and you took your hands off the steering wheel and said, go achieve that optimal state. People would ask, why did it make that decision? And so then, and that was really hard. I don't know if they have it yet, but the request was, that we need a results explainer that explains, if you split an order, why did you do that? But think about that. That's a moment in time. You got to take your inventory snapshot across a huge network at every point in time that decision's made. And then there's store capacities. There's a lot going on. And so at the time, the compute, you couldn't do that. It was just like impossible. So it was really, truly a black box dilemma. And it took a while. It's a trust game. It took a while for the executives to learn to trust the answers coming out of the solution. And I guess I'll say it took time because over time the results did get better, but it took months, many months, and there were setbacks. It was like, no, wait, I think that's and I think the only thing that got us there was we had some smart people that would take some weird examples and dig deep. They would spend hours taking this one order and figure out why it did what it did, and then explain back, and we'd say, that was the right answer, even though it looks weird. And we never found examples of the wrong decision being made by the algorithm. And that kind of helped build that, plus improving results, helped build confidence over time. But that black box dilemma was a very, very real challenge for the teams to get their heads around.
Yeah, I think, that's really good.
Sorry, I think Dylan has his hand up.
Yeah.
If we're still continuing with this topic, I can wait until it's my comments on this topic, but I don't want to break the conversation.
No, go ahead, Dylan.
So two things really quick. One of them is I was actually waiting today to hear the phrase garbage in, garbage out. And my encouragement on that as we all evolve is garbage in, garbage out almost just like kind of reduces the whole thing to feeling very transactional. And we're talking about AI and ML, right? It's very much so going beyond what our typical old-fashioned transactional would be. And I'm just encouraging people to think about this like you would think about nurturing a child or getting a dog that needs to be trained or something like that. There's a lot more to the data than just the flat data itself and the quality. And I think back to your point, Scott, on the expansive data that you can have and having to find groupings for some of those pieces so that it's actually manageable. There's ways I think that we can think about how we group in the various types of data together too, to be more helpful to the engine than maybe the individual data is today. So that's just more of an encouragement. The other thing is that I love about this conversation, and I think Jay, you brought up a comment and that's related to this, is that AI and ML has inherently taken control out to the point where the fear associated with that, with especially businesses that are maybe slightly performing or on that edge of dropping underperformance, is their default fear is bringing them back to the illusion of control, where they feel like if they did know all the details at that micro level, they do feel like they can act on it and do the right thing, is kind of contrary to the concept of AI, because why are you going to have something tell you to do something that you're going to do every single time? So I was just wondering, curious about with that, you talked a little bit about it, Scott, but if anybody else has comments about how they've done that sale into the business to build the trust associated with losing the control that they feel like they need to have, and kind of going back to that macro performance. It doesn't matter what the single transaction is that had that weird sourcing, if your margins are staying where they need, or your costs per package and every other metric you're looking at is going in the right direction.
Yeah, I think Dylan, you bring up a great point. Sometimes it's about people feeling that they're losing control over decision making if they actually pass the decision making over to AI. And that's also relevant to trust. I mean, Das, do you want to actually take this one? How did you actually convince execs, right? In terms of, yes.
Yeah, I think, data is required to convince. In most of the cases, it's a big bet that you're making with new algorithms. So I would say, A/B testing was a great tool for us. A/B testing, not exactly the A/B testing that that is done on a front end customer experience, but slightly different. Simulations, shadow runs, all these things can contribute to building that sort of confidence. So I think that I relate to Scott's point a lot. It's not just true for sourcing, but any AI project. If you don't take in the adequate measures to clean up the data, right? You're in for trouble, because I think business has really no patience for bad results, and quickly these things can get killed if you don't prepare well for it. So my experience, and I think quite a bit of time has to be spent in actually demonstrating parallelly to the current algorithm that the new algorithm can do equal or better. Right, so that's been my thought. I wanted to make another point on, I relate to what Dylan was saying, is that as long as the KPIs remain intact, do you really care, like what each order is? I think that's a very, very valid observation, because I think that is where in my view, where this whole thing is going, is that there are for a long time, planning systems have been using some sort of artificial intelligence, data science methods to figure out what do we need to buy, where do we need to place inventory, all that, right? So the planning side is planning something so to fulfill in a certain way, right? So I want to keep my consumables close to the customer. I want to keep the non-conveyables central location, whatever. I think there are different rules for different retailers, but planning is doing something. Can your sourcing be completely separate from planning, right? Or is it this, are they two sides of the same coin? And I think that's the thing that we need to start thinking about, is that if you're planning your network to do, say, 10% splits max, and 2.5 zones in terms of shipping, and 80 to 90% utilization on a non-peak day, right? Holidays could be exceptions. But if that is what you're planning for, right, doesn't your sourcing need to actually meet those KPIs? And in the end of the day, as long as it tries to meet that network level KPIs, what it does at the order level may not matter so much, right? And I think that's really where the power of AI will come in, is to make sure that your aggregate, is going to be towards, the KPIs that you define for your network. And I think, in my view, that is where, this is going.
Thanks, Ash. And thanks, Dylan. So, I mean, I think we are coming towards the end of our hour, right? So I want to actually look at what is in store for the future. So if you all are technology strategists and you're really looking at building systems for the future. So I'll start with Scott. So Scott, I mean, in terms of future of AI ML in this, what do you actually see? I mean, do you see some kind of a convergence of AI ML across different aspects of ordering, planning, forecasting coming in together? Or do you actually see this still being managed individually? So just wanted to get your thought process, right, in terms of what do you see for the future of AI ML in this domain?
Yeah, I think closing the loop from promising and sourcing back to the front end, which is allocation, replenishment, and placement. It's all about placement at the end of the day. And every time you split an order or ship out a zone, it's you have less than perfect inventory placement. So you got to circle that back then to those systems that make those decisions. And those systems today are largely also old-fashioned ML, right? They're not, and sometimes just heuristic. So I think there's an opportunity to kind of close that loop there. And I think the other one, someone said earlier, this stuff needs to get kind of closer to the customer, the e-com experience. And I think the concept of demand shaping online based on profit optimization, which means getting more stuff in the basket, pre-sourcing. If you can decide this is probably coming from a store, now you can open up if you're suppressing exposure for some of the store SKUs for profitability reasons, all of a sudden you think it's going to come out of that store wide open. You start not just showing that stuff online from that store, but promoting it. I don't know if anyone's doing that today. It was some of the stuff that Coles was looking at when I left, but that closing that loop to back to the customer on what the experience is online, as well as the inventory placement through allocation and replenishment. I think those are some huge opportunities for us to kind of where this can go next.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Scott. Pete, anything from
Yeah,
your
absolutely.
side? Yeah.
So one big area I see is simulations. So when you have these ML tools, right, the black box nature of them, it's the idea of what if I had configured things slightly differently? Like particularly with sourcing, it's often like the trade-off sliders that you have to configure your optimization rules, right? You might want to save on carrier shipping, but you might want to still meet the customer delivery date. And they're not like you can't have it all, right? So it's a trade-off. So you have to kind of figure out, how do I configure these parameters for optimal settings, right? So what I see is this need for simulations, right? So if I had this, I configured it one way, 6 months later, right? What if I had actually done those trade-offs a little differently? What would have been the results, right? So I think that need for simulations is really going to be a key for these tools to say, you have the historical data now, right? The 6 months that you've been running, let's run a simulation on that data with slightly different settings. Can I achieve something better, right? Would I have achieved something better? That way you have better power to control these ML tools than you have in the past. And of course, visibility, we brought that up multiple times. That's going to be another key to success of a good ML solution, is really seeing the value that solution is bringing you and why it's making those decisions that it's making, right? If you look at what's happening with ChatGPT, right, we're seeing distrust because it's coming up with crazy answers. I saw a news study the other day. It can't even answer simple mathematical equations anymore. So people are losing trust in it, right? So if you have to do the same thing, especially with sourcing, right? If somebody comes along in your business and says, there was a closer DC with all of the inventory. Why the heck did the sourcing decision not choose that thing, right? And you could start to lose that trust. But if you have that visibility, you really need to show, okay, these are the decision points that were made, and here's the factors that were considered, and here's the final score for that decision and why we chose it. So that is absolutely going to be key to the success of these solutions as well.
Thank you, Pete. Das, any closing comments from you?
I would just, echo Pete's comment, and I would also say that that's a great opportunity for ChatGPT. Is that how do you make it conversational, right? Why did it choose this node, or why did it not choose this node? That could be, if not using OpenAI for the sourcing algorithm itself, can you explain sourcing decisions using, or what could have happened if I had added the store to the network? I mean, I think that could be an area that we could all explore further.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Gautham, there is one question, if time allows, from Pankaj. Pankaj, if you want to go directly with your question.
Yeah.
Yes, I think my question was, I think we have discussed that we have a lot of use cases within sourcing that can be solved using predictive ML. And now that generative AI is becoming popular, just wanted to understand if there are use cases that could be solved by that. I think that's a little bit touched upon that, so maybe there is something more.
I don't have specific thoughts on that. I actually think this might be a good follow-up, Gautham, which is this group, we do a quick email survey or something on where it might show up, because it's a fascinating question. A year ago, I would have said probably not, but I'm so impressed by what Gen AI can do that it probably is a use case. But I'd love to hear from this group on what those might be.
Fabulous.
Gautham, I have a hard stop here. I have to jump off. I apologize, but this has been fascinating discussion.
Wonderful. Thank you, Scott. Thanks. I would like to thank all the panelists for joining and the participants for attending today's call. So we will run a poll. Please give feedback on what changes you would like to see and any other topics that you would want to cover in the future. Thank you all for joining.
I have a suggestion for some future call, and we can maybe poll the group on it to say, can we have a brainstorming session together on a topic that maybe is not as explored, for example, like generative AI.
Exactly. Yeah, that we can do that. Thanks, Arpan.
Thank you, folks. I enjoyed it.
Hey, great session.
Thanks a lot,
you all.
everyone.
you all.
Thanks for joining in,
Yeah.
and look forward to seeing you in the sessions. Yeah, bye-bye.